today's video, I'm going to answer a question from Austin Gallion. Austin said, I have a question about how do you keep your goggles or face screen from fogging up when you're out on the trail. And he goes on to say it's the only thing that makes snowmobiling no fun. Austin, you're absolutely right, it is no fun. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what causes that problem in the first place and give you a couple of suggestions that might make it easier to deal with. We're going to do all that in 2 seconds, so stick around. So if you're outside in the cold, your visor, your glasses, your goggles are going to fog up. And I remember this was a problem for me when I started snowmobiling as well. And I can remember asking more experienced riders what they did about it. So I'm kind of happy to share my tips with you. If you stick around to the end of the video, we'll talk about a similar problem where ice and snow builds up on the outside of the visor. And I'll give you a little DIY project for a tool that I came up with to clear it. All right, now before I get started, those kinds of questions, those tips and tricks and how do you guys do it, that's exactly what I started the channel for. So if you haven't already, take a second, subscribe to the channel, click the little bell next to the button and you'll get notified when I post a new video. Okay, so let's go. So I think a good place to start is understanding what causes the problem in the first place. Then we can start to look at some ways of dealing with it. Basically, warm air can hold more water molecules than cooler air because it takes energy for them to remain as a gas. So when you start taking energy away or you start cooling air down, those water molecules slow down, they start to condense, and you see them as water vapor. If warm, moist air strikes a cool object like your visor, then it really quickly condenses and you get fogging. So if we're going to deal with the heartbreak that is visor fogging, we need to remove one of those two things from the equation, right? We need to get rid of the warm, moist air, or we need to get rid of the cool surface so it has nothing to condense on. Let's take that cool surface or the lens. So the first thing you can do is move it away from your breath altogether by going with goggles and an open face helmet. Some guys like that look. I personally prefer a full face helmet just to cut down on heat loss. If you do go with goggles, and there's a lot of cheap ones available online, make sure whatever you get has a double lens like this one. That's basically the same as the windows in your house. Most windows now have a double pane of glass. Inside one stays warmer than the outside one, and it's less likely to form condensation. And likewise, some snowmobile helmets like this one have a double shield as well. Now, if you do go with a full face helmet, the other option you have is a heated shield. So basically your helmet plugs into a little plug on the snowmobile, puts a little bit of current through the helmet, just enough to keep it warm enough that your breath doesn't condense on it. So now that you've got a visor that's not quite as cold as the outside temperature, that's part of the problem, but you may still get fogging. So the other part of the problem is that warm, moist air. Okay, now the only way to really eliminate that problem is to stop breathing. But if you stop breathing, it really takes a lot of the enjoyment out of snowmobiling. Yeah, I think he's dead. The visor's clear though. So what can we do about dealing with the warm, moist air? Well, for starters, make sure you've got a snowmobile helmet is my first piece of advice. So if you're new to snowmobiling, you may be just using a motorcycle helmet. Obviously, they're very similar to a motorcycle helmet, but there's a couple of key design differences. So the one thing that's really important with fogging is the vents, right? So you got a vent in the front, you got a vent in the back, so that's going to evacuate that warm, moist air out the back of the helmet, keep it away from the visor. That's the first part. But the thing that's kind of unique to a snowmobile helmet is this, right? So this is a breath deflector or a breath shield, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's meant to direct your breath away from the visor and down the bottom of the helmet. Now, there are less expensive versions, and like everything, you get what you pay for. So this is an HJC Dagger. I think this is just over $100 Canadian. So it's not the best, but it's not bad. And I'll show you a better helmet in a minute, just so you know the difference. But the one thing that's really important with these is making sure that they fit you well, right? Because this is only going to work if your breath is deflected down. And that's dependent on that seal across the bridge of your nose. So the first thing here, this has a flexible piece on the top. So when I wear the helmet, I'm going to make sure that that's form-fit around my nose. The other thing is that the breath deflector itself fits to the inside of the helmet, usually with Velcro. So if you can reposition that at all to make sure you got a nice snug fit, that's really important. Now, my next suggestion is a little bit more expensive, but if you really like snowmobiling, a good helmet is really a good investment. So you might want to save up and buy something a little bit better like this. So this is not an overly expensive helmet. This is the first generation of Skidoo modular helmets. Skidoo is certainly not the only manufacturer. There's lots of modular helmets out there. What I really like about this one, it's got this breath evac system. This is basically just a better version of the breath deflector on the HJC helmet. So you basically have a nice seal across your nose and mouth with this pilot style mask. So this helmet also has a double shield. So with that mask, it works really well for fogging. The other really cheap thing you can try is just a Balaclava, right? I mean, you can get these under 10 bucks at Walmart. There's more expensive ones you can get from your dealer. Some of them are designed to be used with a mask system, for example. So not only will this keep you warm, but you may find it cuts down on the fogging as well because you're covering your nose and your mouth. And you look a little bit like a ninja. Another tip is to flip your visor up when you come to a stop, right? When you're flying down the trail, you got airflow through the helmet. Obviously, when you come to a stop, you don't. And then your face, not just your breath, but your face is warming the air inside the helmet. My last tip is related to a slightly different problem, and that's when you get moisture forming on the outside of the visor. This can be a lot more of a problem, and typically you see it when temperatures are a little bit warmer. So you've got drizzle or freezing rain or even really wet snow and it sticks to your visor. If you can help it, try not to wipe it with your gloves. Sometimes you're stuck and you kind of have to, but what you tend to do is just smear it and then it refreezes and makes it even harder to see. So what you can do is grab one of these snow brushes. You know, at the end of the season, you can usually pick these up for a couple of dollars. I tend to buy a new one every year, so I take the old one, cut a couple inches off the end of it, and what you end up with is a small tool like this. So you got a little snow brush to clear snow off the helmet, and then you got a small squeegee that's just perfect for wiping the visor of your helmet. And it's small enough to fit in your jacket pocket. Austin, thank you so much for your question, and I hope that video helps you out. Now it's over to you guys. What do you do to keep from fogging up? Take a second, post a comment below. Until next time, I'm Dave Clark. Thanks for taking the time to watch.